The idea of making a teenage Batman was something that it took us a while to wrap our head around.
Taking a character that's iconic and has a huge history of great stories, having to wipe that clean and start over again and come up with something that's just as good is practically impossible.
We worried about this. We've got to do this right or we're going to be a laughingstock.
When I came up with the idea of Bruce handing the torch to the new generation and setting the show in the future, we started getting excited about it.
It was amazing. If somebody had told me the idea ahead of time, I would have said, oh, that can't work, teenage Batman. But I loved it.
It's not just an interpretation of something old, but a reinvention. The tough thing with coming up with a new Batman was like, who is it going to be? You know, we didn't want to kill off Bruce Wayne, ever. He is Batman.
You can never really replace Bruce Wayne, and you never really want to. We thought it would be fascinating if Bruce were still alive.
I don't think anybody would have watched the show if we just said, well, you know, Bruce is gone and here's the new guy.
When you're dealing with old Bruce Wayne, you're dealing with a guy who has given his whole life to his cause, and he hasn't seen the city get a whole lot better.
Once he lost the identity of Batman, he lost purpose. So this kid coming into his life regenerated that.
He had to teach this young upstart how to make judgments as to what is right and what is wrong.
It really made sense in sort of projecting this into the future to have him turn into the mentor. That made it so that we remained connected to all of that mythology from the old Batman show.
And then we started thinking, well, what's Terry like? You know, we don't want him to be literally just Bruce Jr.
The night is young and so am I.
I'd think a good night's rest might be more beneficial.
Like you said, who sleeps anymore?
The idea was to go completely opposite from what Bruce Wayne had been.
He's smart, but he doesn't apply himself. He's good looking, and he's charming, and he's funny. And he's kind of coasting on that.
His parents are divorced, and that gives him an edge and a bit of a tragedy already.
And he's, you know, a little bit on the shady side of the law sometimes. He's just a kid who gets in trouble.
Unlike Bruce Wayne, who from the age of 9 started the control bit, you know. Well, as soon as his parents died, he became determined to become what he became.
In contrast, you've got Terry McGinnis, who had no money, was born into no wealth whatsoever.
He has 2 very middle-class type parents, and one of them gets killed, and how does that shape him into becoming Batman?
He can't just be a super clean, nice kid. He's got to have something that would make him put on the suit.
He would have to have an anger inside him, because Batman has an anger inside him.
Where's Dad?
Honey,
Dad?
He doesn't always have the right choices instinctually himself, but he learns from Bruce Wayne.
And what that does is create a character that you can relate to. You know, we're not somebody who trained from childhood to be the perfect specimen.
They're totally different personalities, and I think that really lended itself to the energy of the show because old Bruce did not get this kid, but he's got to work with him.
The most enjoyable part of writing for the show for me was that dynamic of the embittered old man and the kind of callow young man. Where they met in the middle.
Ultimately, their goals are the same. It's just their backgrounds are so different. But that creates drama.
Something happened to you, didn't it? And it wasn't just that you got old.
The difference between Bruce's Batman and Terry's Batman is that he'd try to scare you into giving up first. And if you didn't, then he'd beat you up. Whereas Terry probably would, you know, throw a batarang at the back of your head first.
He comes at being Batman from a completely different place. There's all these great toys to play with. It's like, look at that Batmobile, that's sweet. You know, look at that suit that enhances my powers, gives me the ability to fly.
Bruce is more of a tactician, a warrior, someone who has studied all levels of fighting.
He was in control of himself. He's totally in control.
Terry is a brawler. He just gets in there and he goes on instinct alone.
His whole way of crime fighting is a lot more energetic and a lot more reckless.
Terry's much more impulsive and will take chances that maybe Bruce thinks are foolish.
They approach problems in different ways. Batman's trying to stop crime, and Terry is trying to make people's lives better.
When Bruce Wayne was Batman, he didn't really have a mentor figure to guide him. Terry actually has Bruce in his head all the time.
You get an interesting dynamic because you're actually able to be inside Batman's head and hear the contradictory information going on.
From now on, we're handling it my way, which means taking our time and getting it right.
Like a lot of kids who rebel against their parents, you know, he wants to do things his own way as well. He needs to learn. Having that voice in his head works against him because he likes to fight against it sometimes.
On the other hand, Terry brings something new to the equation. He's very good with the technology, and he interacts with the suit in an almost instinctive way, whereas Bruce was not native to the digital world.
So there's a lot to be learned on both sides. Bruce Wayne had to learn a lot about what this kid is dealing with and what he could demand of this kid, and vice versa. Terry had to learn where Bruce Wayne was coming from.
Whereas Bruce declared war not just on the guy who killed his parents, but all of crime, Terry kind of wants to do that. But once his dad's killers are brought to justice, it's kind of like, well, okay, I'm kind of done. But hey, there's all this other stuff to play with. And I think gradually he's learning to be a little bit more altruistic in his motives.
Sometimes I ask myself, is Batman just the suit or is he the man inside? Time to find out.
Terry still has a family around, and that helps keep him grounded and helps keep him connected to the rest of society.
These are all things Bruce has denied himself in his quest to become Batman.
Terry figures out how to be a person and still be an effective Batman, which is something that Bruce never figured out.
To me, he's not as driven as Bruce was. He's a little saner.
A lot of the reason Terry was doing it was because he'd found a new father figure. He became Batman for Bruce.
It's a good match. It's never an easy match because from the get-go, Bruce hates him. I don't want to be Batman again. I don't even want to think about that. But Terry is kind of like his youthful side who comes to him and says, it's time to answer the call again, old man.
Bruce, Tim, and I have worked together for a long time, and we don't have many differences. But one of the differences we have is that he had it in his head that maybe Bruce somehow should have fathered Terry McGinnis. And I never thought that.
That was an idea that we had played with back at the time when we were doing Batman Beyond.
What if the big shocking reveal was that Terry was Bruce Wayne's biological son through some kind of weird cloning experiment?
It never really progressed beyond a few discussions we had.
Finally, at the end of the Justice League, he actually figured this out, and they told that story.
That's very controversial to this day. There are still people who think it's really, really cool, some people who are indifferent to it, and other people who just think it's just a travesty.
I sort of came down on the side that no, they really didn't have anything to do with each other. They were linked more by temperament and by a sense of justice.
I was kind of on the fence about it, actually. I was perfectly happy with him being his own person, which I still think he is.
Depending on who you talk to on the old show, some of them agree with that, some of them didn't. I think it's pretty clear which side Bruce was on.
We knew it would be controversial, that people would say, it makes Terry, you know, kind of a victim of fate, and that he was just Bruce Wayne Jr., which we deliberately set out not to do.
Where do you think you're going?
It seemed to me like it was intentional from the beginning. I always wondered why the McGinnises had a kid with black hair and blue eyes.
It's almost like subliminally we were laying the seeds for what we were going to do later. Partly it is kind of fate that Terry was destined to become Batman, and it's a set of weird coincidences. But at the same time, he still is his own man. It's our way of saying that, you know, biology only goes so far.
Batman's not about DNA, it's about the individual. If you can get that kind of willpower, if you can go the limit and then push yourself beyond the limit, you have what it takes right there to be a Dark Knight.
It kind of brought it full circle, because I think we sensed that Justice League Unlimited was going to be our last chance to tell some of these stories.
Starting with Batman, through Superman, Batman Beyond, and Justice League, we literally thought that was going to be our last episode. We thought that would be kind of a nice way to kind of dovetail it all the way back to the very first episode of Batman.
Batman goes on. Bruce Wayne may be gone, the show may be gone, but there'll always be a Batman.
When I saw how elegantly they had done it by bringing in all those elements from Batman Beyond and the Batman animated series and Mask of the Phantasm, I was going like, yes, this is the way it should end.
The core relationship between Bruce and Terry in the show was always really interesting to me. It was a chance to sort of tie that relationship off and see Bruce have a happy ending.
His whole reason for being Batman started with the loss of family, and now he can stop being Batman because he's regained family.